Hi, my name is Shaylynn Sampson. I come from the Gidimt'en Nation. I'm from Loch Gibu, which is Wolf Clan, and Wilpsbulk. I'm here today to interview Slato, Molly Wickham, and I'll just be interviewing and asking a few questions. Molly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hari sai soze Slato Sydney Gidimten Hesley with Soten Hisden. I hold the name Slato in Cassia House, which is on the territory of Fluderspin, where I currently am at Gidimten Checkpoint. And I'm the spokesperson for the Gidimten Checkpoint. Our house chief, who is the spokesperson for our house, is Denise Was, Frank Alec Jr. And I'm happy to be on the call today to give you a few updates about what's happening on the ground here in Wet'suwet'en territory.
Awesome, thank you. So my first question is, what are the updates in terms of construction on what's going on in the territories? What is Coastal GasLink up to, and what are their plans for the coming months?
Well, Coastal GasLink is behind schedule and over budget for the pipeline that they're working on right now through Wet'suwet'en territory. They had to shut down for a few months, and they're just starting to, due to COVID, and they're just starting to ramp work up again after being shut down for a few months. At one point, they had only 600 workers working on the entire length of the pipeline. During that time, Foresight Security, the other security, and the RCMP were still present on the territory, but Coastal GasLink was not for quite some time. And so now they're starting to ramp up work again, and they're attempting to clear territory, clear the right of way through Cassia House territory, which is one of the last areas that they have to clear in the main section 7. And so we're seeing a lot more activity here on the ground, a lot more workers on the territory, and currently they're just trying to clear the right of way and do some flagging. I guess they don't have all of their permits in place to continue with work. They did get shut down. There was a stop work order for wetlands because they hadn't properly surveyed the wetlands or created mitigation plans for a lot of our very important wetlands within our territory. And so that's another hurdle that Coastal GasLink is trying to overcome and trying to push through the work without properly having management plans for those critical environmental spaces. And they're also really important to us culturally, obviously, and environmentally. So.
Great, thank you. So do you have an idea of what they're planning in the future? What's going to be coming in the next 6 months to a year? What people can be expecting to see from Coastal GasLink?
Yeah, so we don't have an up-to-date schedule for their work that they're doing, but right now they're trying to go through some of our pristine wetlands and old growth forest. And so right now they're really just focusing on that work. Coming into the spring and summer, we're not quite sure if they're going to be shutting down during spring breakup. It gets really, really muddy around here come spring, and for a few months it's nearly impossible to make it into the backcountry with their machinery and with their workers. In the past couple of years, what we've seen is that they haven't stopped working. They've pushed through, which has caused a lot of damage to our area, just even in terms of the roads and the road work that they've had to do. They've had to lay down industrial matting in order to even get into the backcountry and have a lot of their machinery stuck and that kind of thing. So we're not quite sure if they're gonna take a break for spring, but we know that coming into the summer and coming into the fall specifically, they're going to be trying to make their way under Wickham. And Wickham is our headwaters. It's for anybody who's familiar with this struggle, know that Wickham is our main priority, that it's our last clean drinking water source in our territory. It's where all of the salmon spawn in our territory, all the way down to the coast. It's one of the main contributors to the Skeena, which is a major salmon bearing river as well. And so we have a lot at stake, and we really have to look towards what their plans are to cross with Wickham. And so previously they were planning on doing directional drilling underneath the river and putting the pipeline through that way. And since then, we've learned that they can't actually do that for whatever reason. We know that a lot of, they had no idea what the stability is for the ground, the water flow underneath the river. One wrong move trying to even do directional drilling or any kind of drilling underneath our river could contaminate the river forever. With sediment alone, the sediment that would be caused by the drilling will make the water contaminated forever. So we won't be able to drink the water. It's going to affect the spawning of the salmon that happens starting in July through to September. And so we really have to watch what the work they're doing near the river at those times. And then they plan to do a different kind of directional drilling underneath the river come fall.
Right. That's really scary that they're planning on doing that to a river that feeds so many nations downstream, including mine. I think just moving forward, in terms of the pandemic and COVID-19 in a rural northern community, how has that impacted the work that's been happening on the ground for Coastal GasLink? And have you seen direct impacts on the community?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said before, they were shut down for a couple of months. They had to they had to scale back their workforce quite significantly. And so that really put them behind, even more so than they were already behind schedule and over budget as well. And so that's had a huge impact on the work that they've been able to do in the past 6 months. But it's also had an impact on the work that we're able to do because our communities are so vulnerable, and we know that we have very, very few language speakers left. We have very few knowledge holders. Our oldest elders are at the greatest risk of dying from this pandemic. And the Coastal GasLink workers were bringing in COVID into our communities. Almost every case of COVID-19 that happened in our communities was directly linked to either Coastal GasLink or the LNG Canada project. And so we knew that people were getting COVID from working at the man camps, working with CGL security, and they were bringing it unknowingly into our communities and into the surrounding towns like Burns Lake, Houston, and Smithers, and spreading it around. And we had 3 of our elders die within 1 month. One of who was a family member, and also knowledge holders and language speakers that we no longer have anymore, that are no longer alive because of Coastal GasLink and the work that they've been doing. And so we tried really hard to put a stop to that. It was successful that they had to scale back for a couple of months, but we wanted to see stronger measures taken. There was a lot of advocacy from other groups, from frontline medical workers, support letters from a bunch of different organizations like BC Sierra Club, letters from our Tsakaize, our women matriarchs and chiefs, letters from the hereditary chiefs to Dr. Henry about the spread of COVID because of this industry that's invading our territories and that it's killing our people. And so now they're rolling out vaccinations in the territories, but we all know that that doesn't prevent people from getting COVID or prevent people who are vaccinated from spreading COVID. And so it's a really scary time right now with Coastal GasLink ramping up this work and this perceived, invincibility around the pandemic that I'm afraid is going to result in more more deaths in our community. And so it's been really hard because we've taken every measure. We've stopped inviting people up to the territory during COVID because we want to make sure that our communities are safe. And we know that that's not enough. We have to stop the company from bringing COVID into our communities.
Yeah, definitely. It's been bizarre to watch those letters coming out, and still how much work they're scaling up to again when we're still in the height of a pandemic. So I think a lot of people, what a lot of people want to know right now is, because of COVID and how difficult it is to travel, and especially going to rural communities, folks want to know how they can support um, the resistance that's ongoing and the reoccupation of the territories. And so is there ways that during COVID-19 that people can still become involved or help out with what's happening up there?
Yeah, we've developed some really good protocols around COVID and being at camp and people coming into the communities. And so we've asked people to isolate where they are for 14 days, and then to be getting COVID tests before anybody comes up to the territory. So it is still possible for now for people to come and be present on the ground in the resistance to the pipeline and the occupation of our lands. We have a bunch of work that's coming up in the springtime. And so anybody who wants to get involved, please contact us through the intoaccess.com website and apply to come to camp and just see what the opportunities are, because we have some really good ways to get involved right now. We also want people to really focus on the contractors and the subcontractors, as well as investment opportunities that people can get connected to. So if people can't be on the ground, if people can't isolate and be safe to travel, then we do want people to reach out and see how they can be connected and how they can organize in their own communities. And one of the things that we've seen that's been so amazing is all of the work that folks have been doing around Trans Mountain, all of the work that the youth have been doing, and those are ways that people can continue to do direct action, be organized, but do it safely in their own pods, and do it in a way that they're not putting themselves or other people at risk. And so we've seen that it can be done. And so we're excited for people to be aware of what's happening, to keep informed about what's happening on the ground here, because even though COVID has taken the forefront in terms of all the media, the resistance to the pipeline hasn't stopped at all. We here, and we will continue to do the work here. And so we want people to still be able to be involved.
That's great. I know it's really easy to get caught up in all the negatives of what's happening on the territories in terms of destruction of land from coastal gas link and industry, and the presence of RCMP still being there. But what are some projects that have been going on that are positives on the territory, or what are plans that are coming up that you're really looking forward to?
Well, we have the tiny house builds that happened last fall and during the summer. And so we had a really great and beautiful tiny house that was built in Lekwungen territory, in Koksilah territory, that made it up this way. And so we're super grateful to everybody who participated in that. And we have another larger tiny house that we've been working on here. And so we've reoccupied another part of the village site, really close to Gidimt'en checkpoint at Lamprey Creek, where people would gather to harvest lamprey eels. We'd gather with the Gidimt'en and Wet'suwet'en here on the territory. And so that's a reoccupation that's been happening that we're hoping to get finished and finalized this coming spring. And so we want to be able to have those tiny houses available to Gidimt'en to come and be out on the territory that aren't right in camp. So they have their own space that are comfortable and accommodating for our elders and our chiefs to be able to come out and have their own space right on the river. And so we're really looking forward to those being done. We're working on solarizing them as well. So we have some partners in that, and that's a really great project that's been happening on the territory.
That's awesome. Moving on again. So I know that last year there was a lot of solidarity actions going on in the winter after the raids that happened on the territories, and you guys shut down Canada, which was really cool to see. But also, that's also when the rise of COVID started happening, and a lot of people that were doing solidarity actions, after those actions were finished, the hereditary chiefs started speaking with the government about a memorandum of understanding. And I'm just wondering, has anything come of that MOU? Have there been any follow-ups to that, or what's happening?
Yeah, so first of all, you all shut down Canada. Everybody shut down Canada, which is amazing. And I think that there's a lot of energy that's been pent up over this past year. I've seen so many more movements, coming to the forefront, and more Indigenous communities and BIPOC folks getting organized amongst themselves and really taking a center stage. And that's something I think that's really, really positive. That inspires me on a day-to-day basis, and especially all of the young people. So what all of you did at the legislature was amazing. I've spoken to our hereditary chiefs, and everybody was super proud of everything that was happening down in Lekwungen territory, Koksilah territory, all over from coast to coast, our Mohawk relatives. And so I think that all of those movements have been gaining strength, even though we haven't been able to be in solidarity with one another in real life, face to face in many instances. I feel like the time is coming where all of that energy, all of that pent up energy and organizing on the ground that we've been able to do in between in the last year is really going to come to a head again. I think that it's, COVID took the spotlight for the last year, but the Indigenous resistance has not gone away. I think that it's still our time. It's still a critical time for Indigenous people to stand up with, especially with the UNDRIP and all of this talk about reconciliation. And, we all know reconciliation is dead, but also there are new tools that we have that we can use, and that are drawing a lot of attention to Indigenous issues. It's not something that can be ignored anymore. It's something that has to be dealt with. And so I'm very inspired, by the young people like yourself. I'm inspired by the Braided Warriors, by the Tiny House movement, by all of the people that are standing up and making noise, because that's going to keep our issues at the forefront, and it's just going to help inspire more people, and it's just going to keep building this resistance, because we actually see hope for a future, where I think that a lot of people haven't felt that for a very long time. And I know, talking to some of our elders and chiefs, is that it's inspiring everybody, and it's helping people to keep pushing on when it feels like it's overwhelming. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. In terms of the MOU, I think that it was a really great step for our hereditary chiefs in our system to be recognized. I think that there's a lot of work to do yet because of COVID. There hasn't been a lot of movement as far as I know. That's something obviously that the hereditary chiefs would have more input on and have more to say about. But in terms of on the ground resistance to Coastal GasLink, it hasn't affected it at all. So the MOU specifically said that they would not deal with Coastal GasLink or any projects that were prior to the MOU being signed or the discussions that are in progress. And so that means that any projects that had already been started are considered off the table, and that they're not going to be negotiated on. So that means that we have to keep pursuing our own forms of resistance. We have to keep following Wet'suwet'en law on our territories. CGL is trespassing. The eviction order still stands from the hereditary chiefs that was given to them last year, and so we have to keep enforcing that in whatever ways that we can.
Yeah, I know with everything that was happening last year, it kind of, the way that the MOU was portrayed in the media made it seem a lot like that the issue had been resolved. But from the beginning, they weren't even dealing with the issue of Coastal GasLink at all, was my understanding.
That's right. And one of the conditions of even coming to the table to talk to the government was that the RCMP would remove themselves from the territory. And so that's why we saw, railway shut down. That's why we saw all these solidarity actions, was to get the RCMP off Wet'suwet'en territory. And so they did vacate their detachment on Gidimt'en territory for some time, for most of the year. And then recently, since November, they've reoccupied that detachment on Gidimt'en territory. But they've never left the territory completely, even though they weren't living at the detachment anymore. They were still patrolling regularly. They have a QRT team, a quick response team that is in one of the nearby communities, where they will show up within an hour of any call to them. So anything that happens on the territory. And in the fall time, we were having ceremony, we were hunting on the territory. We had a lot of conflict happening in the territory, and the QRT team was called on several occasions to come and threaten us with arrest for conducting ceremony and for hunting on our own territory. And so right now we still have a hunting blind that is at risk of being torn down by Coastal GasLink. They plan to come in and tear that down last November. Right now, at this moment, it still stands. We're still protecting it, and we need to continue doing that because it's in an area, a very unique ecosystem area that's surrounded by wetlands and in a valley right behind camp, that is also where Lamprey Creek flows into. And so they plan on trenching a pipe right through the wetlands, right through this ecosystem where it's grizzly bear habitat, and right through Lamprey Creek, where our lamprey eels are at a critical condition. We barely have any lamprey eels left in that creek, and they used to be a staple food of ours. And so that's one thing that we're really focusing on, protecting our wetlands and protecting our creek crossings, and looking forward to protecting Wet'suwet'en if they plan to try and drill underneath her.
Yeah, that's super critical. And also wondering, has there been any discussion, or has any of the hereditary chiefs discussed like changing their mind? Have they said anything about that? Is there any changed stance from the hereditary chiefs on Coastal GasLink, or any updates on that?
All of the hereditary chiefs, because they stood up in our feast hall and said that there would be no pipelines going through Wet'suwet'en territory. That is now law. Within our system, within these lands. That is law, and that will remain so. And they're 100% committed to protecting these territories from Coastal GasLink or any other pipeline that might come through. We recently were notified that Pacific Trails Pipeline, which was owned by Chevron, is now planning to start construction again in 2021. And so this year, they're planning to come back into the territories. And this is a resistance that has been going on since way back in 2015 with the Unistoten, where PTP was trying to come through back then. And the project had died for a while. And so now they're coming back and trying to start construction again this year.
That's incredibly stressful and just disappointing. There's so much work that's being done on the territories already. And I've also heard that there's a proposed coal mine that's being proposed on your territories as well. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, so at the same time as they're trying to justify fracked gas, one of the justifications for these pipelines is that they're cleaner energy, that it's cleaner than coal. And so this is the future, this is the way forward. And then at the same time, Allegiance Coal is trying to put an open pit coal mine in Cassia House territory, just outside of Smithers in a community called Talqua. And so they're planning to put 3 open pit coal mines in Cassia territory. And so we're also dealing with that at the same time. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of organizing that's happening. There's a lot of meetings that are happening. We need to make sure that our house group and the clan and the other house groups that are being affected are informed about what this is actually going to mean for our territories. You know, we've done, as Wet'suwet'en, we don't just come up with these, answers arbitrarily about, yes or no to this project or that project. With UNDRIP and free, prior, informed consent, we have to have the information. So we've been accessing that information, and we're making these decisions based on hard science, based on our cultural expertise of the territory, what we need to survive as Wet'suwet'en people. And that's how we're coming to these decisions. And so, we knew way back 10 years ago when there was up to 13 pipelines, oil and gas, proposed to come through our territory, that the first one would be a catalyst. The first one would be set a precedent. And I've been telling people, this isn't just one pipeline. This is setting a precedent for the way that Indigenous peoples and Indigenous lands are going to be treated moving forward, for all our future generations. This is setting a precedent that once one pipeline goes through, there are many more that will follow. Because the way that they have to drill through the mountains, avalanche areas through over to the coast, they will be creating space and a footprint for other pipelines to follow. So we can't just think of this as one single pipeline and the impacts of it. We have to look at it as cumulative impacts that will be affecting our people forever, that will affect our river forever, that will affect our salmon and our moose habitat for all of our future generations. And that's why the hereditary chiefs and all the clans made that decision. And that's why we have to continue to fight, and do anything and everything that we possibly can to protect from this one pipeline going through.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned earlier, but I was one of the Indigenous youth that was at the legislature last winter in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en, and I was one of the 5 Indigenous youth that was arrested in the legislature on the last night of our occupation. But I remember something that was often said during our time there was that a win for the Wet'suwet'en is a win for us all, because we knew that what happened on Wet'suwet'en territories would set a precedent not only for your nation, but for all of our nations. There was Indigenous youth from over 30 different nations that stood in solidarity on the steps. And I think we all got to recognize like how important this really was. And so I feel like there's a lot of gratitude for the work that's being done on your guys' territories, and just standing there and facing the industry that's trying to destroy your home territories that's a relative to you. I think we're just about out of time, but maybe do you want to just recap the ways that folks can support, things that are coming up for camp, and anything else you'd like to add that you feel we didn't touch on?
Yeah, so I just want to encourage everybody to follow along. We have all of our social media platforms that are listed on our website, yintoaccess.com. I know a lot of folks have been already following along, and I want to encourage people to keep organizing, keep connecting with us, to keep people up to date, because oftentimes things that are happening on the territory aren't making it into the media. They aren't making it into, the general public conversation. But I can assure you that we haven't just been sitting idly by for the past year. We have been continuing to be in conflict here on the territory and continuing to protect it in every way that we can. And that we really want to connect and support other Indigenous folks too, and other Indigenous communities that are in this fight with us, because I agree, this is something that we're all in together. And what happens to one of us happens to all of us, and we got to stand up and we got to support one another, and we have to back each other up, because we know that this is all of our future. The climate change, the climate crisis, the impacts on the environment, that affects all of us. But it's also about our freedom and about our future and about liberation for our people. And if enough of us are vocal, if enough of us act, if enough of us stand up in solidarity with each other, there's no way that we can't win. We will win for sure. And we know that in this fight against Coastal GasLink. We know that we're going to do everything that we possibly can. By any means necessary, we're going to defend this land. And so please continue to stand with us, because sometimes it makes the difference between feeling like you want to give up and being able to fight another day. And so we really appreciate everybody who is working with us. We appreciate everybody who's talking about this movement with their families, with their friends, everybody who's taken time out of their lives to make sure that we are succeeding. And it really means the world to all of us. So I just want to say Snake Halia to everybody, and to you and to all the youth that are inspiring us on a day-to-day basis. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Hamia, for taking the time to speak with me. It's always an honor. But I'll end it off there. Hamia to the folks who are going to be tuning into this, and yeah, take care.
Howdy, this is Slato. I'm the spokesperson for the Gidimt'en checkpoint. I belong to Koksilah House on Wet'suwet'en territory, part of the Gidimt'en clan. And I wanted to just bring you an update on what's happening on the INTA. Coastal GasLink, after a few months of having been shut down due to COVID outbreaks in the territories, is ramping up work again for the spring. They're attempting to clear the whole right-of-way through Koksilah House territory in preparation for the fall time, where they will drill, do directional drilling underneath Wickham, underneath our sacred headwaters. We currently have and are defending and occupying our hunting blind, which is behind the Gidimt'en checkpoint camp. And it's located in a very unique ecosystem in a wetland around Lamprey Creek, where we have very few lamprey eels that still survive in that creek, and Coastal GasLink plans to trench right through the Lamprey Creek, which runs into Witzinkwa. They plan to trench through all of the creeks and bulldoze through all of the wetlands in our territory in the coming months. So we are defending that space right now. We're looking forward to what's going to be happening with Witzinkwa, what's going to be happening in the fall time. We're getting ready for that and hope that you can help us in that. So one thing that we're preparing for and that we'd like support with is a building camp this spring. And so if you have capacity, please check out our website, yintaaccess.com, and follow along for updates. And if you're interested and have the capacity to help with the building camp, please contact us through the Yinta Access email or apply online. And so one of the fundraising efforts is to rebuild on Koksilah Yinta in one of our reoccupied sites, a feast hall, a gathering space for our chiefs and our community members to be at. Last winter, the structure at 27 kilometer on Gidimt'en territory was burnt down by 2 white supremacists who saw no charges, even though they were identified by our own people. Our own Wet'suwet'en people found them, turned them in, and nothing's been done. And so we're going to be doing some work on the territory to build infrastructure, to build this gathering place, and we'd love for your support. So thank you for following along. Thank you for always being there for us. We really appreciate all of you who send us support, follow along, organize, come up to the territory and help build. and doing everything that you can to support us to uphold Wet'suwet'en and Nak'nu'ten, uphold our laws to defend the Yinta. So keep up the great work. Awitsa.